Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you today on a bright, sunny, warm, hot springtime day here in Boston. It's Monday, the 21st of October. I think it's the third day of summer. It's going to be a really hot one. I'm getting all of the whatever videos and errands I need to get done early because it's going to be 85 degrees with 90% humidity. That's predicted to last. This weather. 80s and 90% humidity and bright brassy sunlight without a hint of cloud, without a hint of moisture, without a hint of wind. That weather is predicted to last until 2732. Not 20-hour 2732 on the clock or on any kind of military designation, not the 27th of the month, but 2732. So 600 years from now. So I'm going to get used to it. I'm a little bit sorry that I had David Murphy take the air conditioning units out of the windows, and obviously I'm looking at, I'm also sorry that I wasted time cleaning and laundering all of the blankets and the sweatshirts and sweatpants, because they obviously aren't going to be needed at all, ever again. But in the meantime, I want to apologize for the background noise. It is apocalyptic, and there's nothing I can do about it. It is just going to go on. The only way that I could avoid it would be to make videos at around 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not going to do that. So I'm hoping that the camera cuts out a lot of the background noise. It won't, no possible way it will cut it all out. But I thought we'd go through mail today, a batch of mail. I went through the last batch of mail with my young friend Ben Dunlap, and it was entirely inappropriate. Not only for me, but for him. It was entirely inappropriate. We had a saucy, X-rated book, which is... We don't know anything about the book. We don't know how well it's done, because we haven't read it. But, first of all, it's an uphill climb for any kind of commissioning editor. They have parents reading their book section. They have grandparents reading their book section. They're not going to want to touch a book that's like that, especially not when they're not 100% sure that it'll be worth it. Keep in mind, most book section editors do not read the new releases they commission. Most of them don't have the time. I know of only one book section where your editor will almost certainly have read the book you're reviewing before you write about it, and it's mine. Both of mine, because I am an editor. For those of you who are new to this channel, I'm an editor for an online literary journal called Open Letters Review, and I'm also an editor for a print newspaper book section in small town northern Georgia. And in both cases, my freelancers have almost never written about a book that I have not myself read. But there's also the uphill battle of whether or not a book like that can be good when it's on such a boring premise. Something that a lot of writers tend to overlook is that hanky-panky, the birds and the bees, is boring on the written page, usually. Usually there are other conflicts, sources of internal drama that are far more interesting. But either way, it was a little odd to go through with Ben, so we've got new mail to go through. We're going to try and go through this without any awkward pauses like that. We'll start with a periodical, the TLS, the London Times Literary Supplement, which has a couple of reviews in here of books that I have run reviews of. Nothing in here that I know of that is a review of a book that I've reviewed myself. But the first thing that I noticed, the very first thing on the front page of it, is a Me Wanty. It's a book that the Times Literary Supplement is reviewing that Steve has not received and wants, and that is this, The Collected Prose of Sylvia Plath, edited by Peter Steinberg, at 900 pages. Me wanty. Steve very much wanty. It's a Faber book. I don't know if it's out in this country yet, but if it is, I want a copy. And it's reviewed by Heather Clark, whose name will be familiar to some of you because she wrote Red Comet, a really big, I thought, really good biography of Sylvia Plath. And that is not a conflict of interest of the type that I usually decry in, for instance, the New York Times Book Review. The New York Times Book Review this week was a parody of what I'm talking about. I talk all the time about how they will get someone to review a book when the someone who's doing the reviewing has a book on the exact same subject, in the exact same vein, in the exact same ethos, at the exact same time, in bookstores now, directly financially competing with the book they're reviewing. I've talked about that. I've complained about the Times doing that many times. And in the Times book review for this passing Sunday, the one with John Lewis on the cover, virtually every review is like that. It's even the children's book. Virtually every review is being written by someone you absolutely should not trust to assess the book, because either they're going to praise it, hoping that a rising tide lift all boats, including their own, or they're going to condemn it, leaving the reader thinking, well, if I'm not going to read this book about intergenerational conflict, maybe I should read yours instead. There's no way that it can be done. There's no way. There might be a way that it can be ethically done, but there's no way in the world it can be done ethically in a way that you, the reader, should believe. You should just flee from it. And it was the whole book review except for Dwight Garner, which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And this is not a case of that. Heather Clark wrote a biography, a big, wonderful, sympathetic, intelligent biography of Sylvia Plath. Steinberg is doing collected letters. They aren't the same thing unless the collected letters is being shaped that way. And it doesn't look to me like it is. So I'll read the review and I will clip it and date it, hoping that I get a copy of the collected prose. But then we have book packages and apocalyptic background noise. I'm very sorry for that. I am speaking in a higher volume, hoping that it to just drown it all out. But it's too hot to close all the windows here. I mean, it is, after all, late October in New England. So this first one is from W.W. Norton, and it is tiny. It is just a speck of a thing. I don't know what could be this small and of any interest to yours truly. Okay. All right, misspoke. This is really small, but it is very much of interest to yours truly. Oh my. This is the new translation by Joseph Luzzi, from the folks at Liverite, of La Vita Noova by Dante. Tiny little thing. This is their comparison, or their companion, to the big Divine Comedy that they have that's out. So it's a Dante season. We had that book on the life of Dante's Divine Comedy. We have a new translation of the Divine Comedy and also a reprint of the Singleton translation. And we have this, a new Vita Noova, the first one since what's his name did his just about 10 years ago. The big poobah who did an abbreviated Orlando Furioso. His name's escaping me. I reviewed that Vita Noova, though, so I'll try to remember to leave my review down below. So this has lots and lots of notes in the back, which you really need for the Vita Noova. And this, in case you're wondering, this is not bilingual. It's just the text. What a cute little volume. No more than 150 pages. Fantastic. So that comes out in December alongside the new Divine Comedy. So, is that true for the Singleton as well? I think it is. Which means that if you have a Dante fan on your list for the holidays, for gift giving, a birthday, an anniversary, or graduation of some kind, well, if you've got the cheddar to spend, you've got the mother of all gifts to give them. Get the Singleton naked hardcover prose translation of the Divine Comedy, first general appearance the thing has ever had. Get the new translation of the Divine Comedy in verse. Get the new Vita Nuova, and get that book about Dante, about the Divine Comedy. Short of a Dante biography, which as far as I know, there is no one coming out between now and the end of the year, that's a Dante Palooza that you could give to some Dante fan. Great. Fantastic. So we don't have a sheet for this, but I'm assuming you all, maybe you don't all know what the Vita Nuova is. Part love story, part instruction manual, part spiritual journey. Dante's little book has had a profound and far-reaching influence on global culture and is considered by many to be the perfect expression of the medieval ideal of courtly love, as well as an essential precursor to Dante's sublime poetic apotheosis, the Divine Comedy. Okay, great. A pretty tough act to follow here, but let's continue on with the mail. Now this thing, young Ben, this thing is December of 2024. So if you are a freelance book reviewer, which someday I hope you will give your hand at, or try your hand at being, if you're a freelance book reviewer and you're like, say your situation is the same as we have it here on this channel, where we got that new translation of the Divine Comedy weeks ago, and maybe we heard that this was coming out, but we didn't get it until now. Well, now is when you'd feel comfortable pitching the two of them to an editor. You would say, this isn't technically a twofer. I will be talking about a new translation of Dante. All of it. Not the letters, but you get the point. All of it. We'll be doing the two masterpieces in one review. An editor might bite at that, but it's going to be tricky for them to bite at it now on the 21st of October when these things are coming out in December. That's their December coverage. We've got sirens, we've got warplanes, we've got cement mixers, we've got people screaming. A little bit earlier, a workhorse was screaming in agony in the street and had to be shot dead. And someone ran up and said, hey, why are there workhorses being shot dead when there haven't been workhorses in Boston streets in 100 years? Someone shot that person dead. Then, since that's a crime, the police came and shot it out with the people and with the neighbors. And there were mortar fire then, too, and an earthquake. I'm hoping that you can hear at least 1 in 5 of the words I'm saying. As I was saying, oh, right, pitching this. Your real hope for pitching these two together, you obviously want to pitch both together. You certainly don't want to pitch this alone because it's tiny. And book section editors are always doing mathematics about the length of the work under review versus the length of available space they have. So you don't want to pitch this alone, especially since the general readership has not heard of it, and they've heard of the Divine Comedy. So you want to pitch the two of them together. And your hope would be that you find an editor who's perfectly willing to let it roll over into January. Because it's possible and likely that most, especially print section editors, have their December coverage nailed down already. But you could give it a try. And you could certainly suggest it in a quick review pitch. And by that I mean quick. Your review pitch to any editor for anything should be no more than 3 lines. Not 3 sentences. 3 lines on the page. Dear Bozo. Line 1, line 2, line 3. Yours very truly. Your name. Nothing else. Just tell them what you want to review. That's all. But you're in those 3 lines of pitch. You could say that you're perfectly happy to do both of them for the new year. That might work. But let's move on to this next package here. I tried. I actually tried closing the windows, but it's too hot here. I mean, we're in midsummer. So let's see what this next one is. For this one, we do have a pub sheet. Okay, this is But Say It Slow, or Take My Name, But Say It Slow, essays by Thomas Dye. Spoiler, these are not essays. I don't even look at it to know, but let's see. Thomas Dye has never gone by his Chinese name, Nu Chen, fashioned from the Knoxville of his childhood and the Chengdu his mother called home. Seen another way, Nu Chen also contains the Cheng of Chenggong, success. In one breath, his name speaks of a hometown, a geography, a half-baked promise to succeed. For Dye, every name is like a map, and every map can define identity. Okay, so seen another way, Nu Cheng also contains the Cheng of Chenggong, success. In one breath, his name speaks of a hometown, a geography, a half-baked promise to succeed, and a threat that you had better not find fault with this book. In this book, the author writes of a river that runs only in the mind and a queer map housed on the internet, of love carved on the rocks of Taipei and Arizona, of pounding the racetrack in Wenzhou, watching his grandfather fade from the world. He recounts a relationship that would literally go the distance from the American Southwest to China and back again, and a road trip chasing the memory of Nabokov, the writer and lepidopterist. As he reflects on the paths his parents took to build a life in America, he also asks what it means to return to a place he never felt he could claim as his own. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. You were born here. I gather from this pub sheet you were born in Knoxville. Anyway, this is not even 300 pages long. So these are not going to be essays. These are all going to be big yellow placards nailed up on trees and fence posts saying, "No criticism. Violators will be shot." So this is a familiar phenomenon in publishing. This comes out in January, and it's a familiar phenomenon, the book that critic proofs itself ahead of time, usually with sexual or identity politics. The name here, the warning here, the instruction here is for you to cheerlead this, no matter how poorly done it is. So we'll see. Maybe it will be well done. It doesn't come out until January, so it doesn't immediately interest me. And it's also going to be a tough pitch to an editor. Editors don't like the word essays. I don't know why publishers put them in the descriptions of the book, especially since I guarantee you these aren't essays. They're just little snippets of autobiography. But I don't know why publishers put those in the pub sheet, because editors break out in hives at the mention of essays. They figure their readers will not be the least bit interested, and they're often right about that. But let's see what this next one is. It's a finished copy of something, and it's got spikes of metal sticking up out of it, which is not good when you've got a little dog running around. So let's get rid of that. Okay, great. This is the finished copy. So this is November then, yes? Yeah, mid-November. This is a finished copy of Lazarus Man by Richard Price. Fantastic. This is his first book in about 10 years. Let's see here. And it gives us the story of a sudden, violent implosion of a residential building in East Harlem, and then traces the reverberations of this disaster throughout the neighborhood and the lives of several characters who are all impacted, as a verb, in different ways by the collapse. From the director of a struggling funeral home and a searching young street photographer, to a detective obsessed with tracking down a missing resident from the building, and a down-on-his-luck man miraculously pulled from the rubble. He must be the Lazarus Man. Okay, so a building explodes, hence the picture on the cover. A building explodes in East Harlem. And we get, that sounds like a classic Richard Price setup. A building explodes in East Harlem, and then we go on from there to how that affects, what's leading up to it, how it affects. This got a starred review from Kirkus and a starred review from Publishers Weekly. And that's no small thing. Those of you who don't know, those are industry journals. Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, they're industry journals where they review books far ahead of their pub date. They're the only people who do. Everyone else in the normal review world, they're expected to wait until around the time of publication. But the review journals do it early so that they can guide the buying decisions of libraries and schools and whatnot. And they don't pull any punches. Their reviews are short and unsigned, and they don't pull any punches. If they get a book that's not good, you're going to hear about it. They're not cheerleading. And also the starred reviews are entirely in the reviewer's discretion. They don't have a quota of those, and they're never told by their editors what to star and what not to. So to get 2 stars from 2 of the major industry journals is a big deal. Not really something unexpected. I think Richard Price is brilliant. But we will see. I had the advanced copy, and I haven't read it yet. So now that I have the finished copy, I will. And then we'll move on to this last one. There are no boxes today, just manila and cardboard envelopes here. Let's see what this one is. Got a pub sheet and everything. Okay, this comes out next year. This comes out in January. Oh, all right. We end on a strong note. This is by Eleanor Barraclough, and this is called Embers of the Hands, Hidden Histories of the Viking Age. And I think we'll read the pub sheet together, but I think you can guess the gist of this, not only by the weird title, Embers of the Hands, but also by the cover. Those are items, little items. Is it possible that this book is going to dissect the Viking Age and what we can learn from the little things in Viking archaeological digs and burial sites? That would be fascinating. I haven't read a book like that in about 10 years. In imagining a Viking, a certain image springs to mind. Yes, Vin at Revenant Reads. A barbaric warrior leaping ashore from a longboat and ready to terrorize the hapless local population of a northern European town. Or an Irish town. Yeah. Yet, while such characters define our imagination of the Viking Age today, they were in the minority. Okay. Instead, this book excavates a preserved, lost world, one that reimagines a misunderstood society. By examining artifacts of the past, remnants of wooden gaming boards, elegant antler combs, doodles by imaginative children and bored teenagers, and runes that reveal hidden loves, furious curses, and drunken spouses summoned home from the pub, historian Eleanor Barraclough illuminates life in the medieval Nordic world as not just a world of rampaging warriors, but as full of globally networked people with recognizable concerns. Okay, all right. All right. How did those, what was it again, globally networked people come to settle there? How did they get the homes on the lintels of which bored teenagers doodled? By killing in brutal fashion everyone who'd lived there when their longships pulled up. That's how. There was no real estate agent for the Vikings, but okay. This is the history of all the people: children, enslaved people, slaves to you and me, seers, artisans, travelers, writers, who inhabited the medieval Nordic world, encompassing not just Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, but also Iceland, Greenland, the British Isles, continental Europe, and Russia. This is a history of a Viking age filled with real people of different ages, genders, and ethnicities, as told through the traces that they left behind. Okay, all right. It's just so PC. It's so PC. I have a feeling that that's what this is going to be, a PC history of the Vikings. Or an SJW history of the Vikings. I have a feeling it's going to be that. There is no possible way to divorce Viking settlements from mind-staggering amounts of bloodthirsty violence. There is no way to do that. So if you try to do that, anyway, you can write about the settlements that occurred, that arose from those violent early contacts. You can certainly do that. That's the book I was thinking of. This book is a poetic kenning from the Viking age that referred to gold. But no less precious are the embers that the author blows back to life in this book, those ordinary lives long past. Well, that does sound really interesting. I mean, any kind of archaeological research on those ordinary lives is going to be interesting. I'll concentrate on that. I'm sure that I will when I get to this. This is January, so we've had a few January books. Yes? Yeah, 2 January books and a November book and a December book. So this is a surefire thing. Like the nature book that we got yesterday, this is a surefire thing as far as pitching to an editor goes. History is not at all. Big 900 new page history of Guadalcanal or Anzio? No. Most editors, no. They won't even consider it. For 10 years, just recently, I had a wonderful editor. We had talks, long talks about every book that was coming out and its pros and cons. She was as sympathetic an editor as I could possibly hope for. And if I came to her with an 800-page extremely detailed history, her answer was almost always, oh, no. No. Readers aren't interested. I'm interested. I'll listen to you talk about it. But readers aren't interested in it. But Vikings are an exception. When it comes to science, dinosaurs are an exception. Most editors do not want to hear about neutrino stars, but they very much want to hear about dinosaurs. And when it comes to history, Vikings are an exception. Just like in the U.S., if somebody writes a really long or abstruse or very detailed sports book, the answer from most commissioning editors will be no, unless it's baseball, in which case the answer is yes. You just have to figure these things out as you go along. But this is eminently pitchable. Eminently so. It's about Vikings, and not only Vikings, but ordinary Vikings. The ordinary folk that came in to settle once all the original Irish inhabitants were dead, had been tortured to death. And this is January, so that's eminently pitchable. You pitch this now, an industrious editor they're not going to be planning January. They're not going to be thinking about the new year, but they'll love having something in the bank. They'll love having something in the bank and saying, oh, a new book on Vikings coming out in January. Oh, that sounds good. Why don't you get to work on that and we'll talk in the new year? I could picture you getting that response from an editor. You'll certainly get that response from yours truly. But anyway, Ben, there you go. There's the mail. And finally, there's nothing weird about it. It's just ordinary books that you could enjoy. So we have Embers of the Hands. What stuff did ordinary Viking people, or the ordinary Nordic people, leave behind once their menfolk were done beheading the medfolk, the other menfolk? What did their ordinary people leave behind? What did they serve their meals on? What did they decant? Did they drink water as a beverage at the table? And if so, did they keep it in containers, in decanters of some kind? Were those things washed? Were they likely to be broken? If they were broken, were they mended? Trays, dresses, hair implements, arm jewelry, When that stuff broke, was it mended or was it thrown away? Was it thrown away in a particular place? Did the raw materials have value? What stories can those things tell us? That is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I hope the author does a real good job. Then we have Lazarus Man by Richard Price, probably one of the greatest authors still alive today working in the English language. We have Take My Name But Say It Slow, a collection of essays about how great the author is. And we have finally a new translation of Vita Noova by Dante, which is amazingly happy news to know. I wonder how who is it? Joseph Lutzi. I wonder how he does the famous opening sentence. The opening sentence is a deliberately twisty-turny tangle. Actually, a lot like the opening of the Commedia. Let's see how he does it. Oh, he does it just in one page. That's all you get. In the early, nearly empty part of my book of memory, there is a chapter with the Latin title, Here Begins the New Life. I intend to copy into this little book the words I find written under it, if not all of them, at least their essence. Okay. All right. So that is very not only conversational, but very nerdy, very bookish in a way that's a Dante. That's very much a Dante. If you follow that Dante throughout this book, you could do a lot worse. Wonderful. Okay, well, there's the mail. Fantastic. Not a bad mixture at all. So I'm gonna sort all this and wrap this up for now. But I'll be back if the noise permits. Thank you.